So you still need to use it like a normal microphone. We're all going to need to be quiet and respectful so that we can hear folks. Otherwise, it's not going to work. But this is really important so that people on Zoom can hear what we are doing this evening. This is the Community Board 7 preservation meeting. It's the second one we've had in October, and we'll be discussing 185 West 86th Street, which is West Park Presbyterian Church. May I have a motion? Before we adopt the agenda, I just want to say on the agenda, we have committee discussion. In that, I'm including that if we have questions for the applicant, we will include that as well. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Excellent. Okay.
I think it's 165.
165, my apologies. The way that this is going to work this evening is we are going to ask panelists to come 3 at a time to this table to speak about this application. You're going to have 2 minutes to speak, and then we're going to move on to the next person. I will also call the next 3 people to kind of stand on the side. Currently, we have 49 people signed up. So if we are expeditious, we will have enough time to finish, ideally, before we move to a committee discussion. I'm going to reserve approximately 45 minutes for a committee discussion. So we probably won't take any more testimony after 8:15, 8:30. I also want to address, there have been some questions about the posting of a draft resolution on the website. I understand that a number of people here may not have been to a Community Board 7 meeting or a preservation meeting. It's pretty standard practice, and in fact is about to be required by our bylaws to post a resolution ahead of time. That resolution can be modified by people this evening on the committee. It would not surprise me if it is modified by people on the committee this evening. So the characterization that we are ignoring your voice is false. And I would love that before people make accusations like that, they can reach out, they can come to our meetings, etc. So with all of that said, we are going to begin with the first 3 in-person testimony, and that will be Reverend Derek McQueen, Mitchell Skarmruth, and Debbie Hirschman. Each of you will have 2 minutes. And I ask that you respect those 2 minutes so that we can get to everyone who would like to speak this evening.
Good evening, and thank you, co-chairs and members of Community Board 7 for the opportunity to speak. My name is Reverend Dr. Derek McQueen, and I'm pastor of St. James Presbyterian Church in Harlem, and I'm vice chair of the Board of Governance and Procedure Committee at the Center at West Park. I'm here tonight to urge this board to vote no on the Presbyterian of New York City's hardship application, a request for permission to demolish the landmark structure of the West Presbyterian Church. This is not a request to remove its landmark designation. It is an appeal to tear down a protected, beautiful, and still usable building on the grounds of alleged financial hardship. I speak as a pastor, a theologian, and a member of this very presbytery. My words come from conscience and from faith, a faith that teaches that silence in the face of expediency is never the will of God. Sacred space is not meant for destruction or abandonment. It is meant for transformation in service to the people. West Park is not a relic of the past. It is a living sanctuary where prayer meets performance, where sacred song meets prophetic art, and where the human spirit is restored through beauty, courage, and community. It remains a place of hope and imagination, alive with the same vitality that built it more than a century ago. To destroy such a place would be to sever a covenant between faith and neighborhood, between architecture and the human soul. West Park continues to be a home for artists, activists, and neighbors who find belonging and inspiration within its walls. Its value is not in its marketplace, but in its capacity to nurture what is best in us. West Park was built on a corner as a public invitation to all, immigrants, workers, seekers, and families to enter freely and be welcomed. That same invitation must now extend to people of all expressions of love, for we are called to be a people of open arms and not closed doors. I speak these words humbly, yet with conviction, to my own presbytery and to this board. It is both my right and my sacred duty to voice conscience to power, to say that preserving West Park is not only an act of faith, it is an act of justice. The Upper West Side has long been a place where neighbors matter, where multi-faith communities thrive, where people live not for fashion, but for freedom. Thank you so much. Stand with the artists and save West Park.
Yeah, okay. Hi, I'm Mitch Shamroth. I've lived on the Upper West Side for over 30 years. I've been a member of the Center at West Park since 2016 and became treasurer in 23. I've been supporting the preservation of this beautiful landmark since 2002, when they first sought to demolish it. 3 years ago, when the Presbyterian submitted virtually the same application, CB7 rejected the hardship application. So what has happened since then? The center at West Park have spent over $1 million restoring the inside of the building and preparing for the restoration of the outside in order to take down the sidewalk shed. And we would have started already if the Presbyterian would have signed off on it. So what else has happened since CB7 rejected the hardship application? Don Friedman issued his independent report that the building can be saved at a fraction of the cost. 2, use of the building as a community and spiritual facility increased exponentially since 2022 before the Presbyterian evicted the center, and this was for thousands of people. The center also has offered to bear the responsibility for repair and restoration costs of the building, and the center has also offered to pay the applicant rent in the amount of $360,000 per year, plus cover maintenance and expenses for the building. So what does that mean? So we are willing, we being the Center West Park, $30,000 a month to improve the interior and pay for work at $30,000 a month. We will also improve the interior and pay for work on the outside to take down the sidewalk shed. Roger Leaf and others have thrown out the number of $9 million. So that means that if we got a 5-year lease, we'd be paying $30,000 a month plus $1.8 million to take down the sidewalk shed, which ends up being $2.15 million a year. This is not a hardship. Then thank you for your time.
Thank you, commissioners. I have lived on the Upper West Side in the 70s and returned to the Upper West Side in the 1990s. I'm here today, not because I'm the executive director of the Center at West Park, which I only began in 2023 when someone gave me the privilege of walking into that space. I'm here today because my life has been devoted to building communities, as is evidenced by the JCC, founded in 1990, opened in 2001, a $95 million building then. Now the discussion is, are there $9 million, because that's Don Friedman's number, in order to pay for total renovations, not just the sidewalk shed. As our 990 shows, there in 2024, there was a surplus of $1.2 million. And currently there are millions of dollars available, which is how the rent proposal was made, how we brought $90,000 of checks signed to this last meeting. People want to purport that the monies aren't there. That's false. People want to purport that the $9 million all has to be paid up front. Anyone who's done construction, as I have, knows that it is a process. You do a cash flow statement. We've done those analyses. This building is safe, as we have seen and proven, and there are documents to show that, as well as financially viable. We are being told the community will get a black box space. It will have 146 seats in it. There are currently 650 seats in West Park Presbyterian Church landmark building, enabling 650 people to be there simultaneously, and has been used 7 days a week by over 20,000 people and audiences alike. Thank you, commissioners.
I apologize. I know I said I would say the next set of people, and I forgot to. I'll also add that if you would like to speak, not sign up.
Once again, HTC has mobilized to oppose the application for the demolition of West Park Presbyterian Church. Our mission has remained unchanged. We wholeheartedly reject the church's application to remove the landmark status of the building on the grounds of hardship. The loss of this building would set a dangerous precedent that encourages demolition over rehabilitation for historic houses of worship. LPC's benchmark of hardship is purposefully high to ensure that all possible alternatives to demolition are considered. In their previous 2022 statement, Manhattan Community Board's testimony rejected the applicant's request as they were unable to provide proof to warrant demolition. We remain unconvinced that the applicant. We remain unconvinced that the applicant can claim hardship based on its stated inability to meet the standards for tax-exempt properties pursuing hardship. The applicant has presented multiple scenarios that do not meet the 6%. However, HTC casts doubts on these scenarios. Their discrepancy underlines the dubious nature of the applicant's claim to bring the building up to code. A full restoration is not warranted or even necessary. Other sources of income have also been adequately explored, have not been adequately explored, and have been outright rejected. The building continues to serve its charitable purpose, and the tenants are being kicked out as we speak. We don't believe that the building must be sacrificed for the good of everyone involved. We strongly support the need for more incentives and technical assistance for congregations. But there is a future for West Park that does not include demolition or removal.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Yeah. My name is Cosmo Vinyl. I am an Upper West Sider, despite my accent. I have been one for nearly 40 years now. The late 80s, I came here. I'm also the proud father of two fourth-generation Upper West Siders, one of whom is a public school teacher and the other works for the housing department developing properties for homeless people. Anyway, besides that, I am one of the artists that works in the church on the top floor. Last meeting, there was a gentleman here who puts on some art shows on the ground floor, but I work with the people that work in the art studio on the top floor. We've worked there since COVID. There has never been a leak in our studio. Not one leak. We've been through snow, rain, high heat. There has never been a problem. The concept that the place is not safe is ridiculous. On the same floor, there is a bathroom, and behind the bathroom is a large dance exercise studio. I've never heard or seen a leak in either of those, and we're all on the same floor. We communicate and we see each other's spaces. So I would just like to say that the building is safe, and for the people that work on the top floor, right under the roof, it looks good to me, and it has never leaked. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Somebody else. My name is Joan Firestone, and I'm a board member of the Center of West Park. I have spent 65 of my 95 years on the Upper West Side in community development and arts education. I have never given up on the motivating promise of supporting its ethnic and religious diversity, promoting its public schools and playgrounds, and retaining its commitment to its engagement in the arts. As president of the Parents Association at PS 166, I led the effort to protect the school from demolition, threatened because of its turn of the century beginnings in 1899, when it was and continues to be a viable environment for the thousands of West Side resident families it serves. I was a member of Planning Board 7, welcoming Symphony Space to join the community's commitment to education, the arts, social justice, and religious freedom. Since ongoing community support remains strong for the performing arts, music and arts education presented at the church by the Center of West Park. As in the development of Symphony Space, professional artists have joined with the board at the Center of West Park, not to parade their stardom, but to celebrate it in similar spaces that serve to launch their careers. We have shown how beloved this space is to people who flock to its engaging arts and education programming, with the hope that it can continue its purpose for future generations. It is essential and morally right for the church at West Park to maintain its landmark status, and I urge your support.
Good evening, neighbors. I am Chris Shelton. I am the pastor at the Broadway Presbyterian Church in Morningside Heights. 24 years ago, I was a seminary intern at West Park, and my first day was September 11, 2001. In that difficult year, I learned so much from this small, diverse, quirky, justice-seeking, peace-loving congregation. I believe deeply in historical preservation. As a pastor, I tell an ancient story week after week, trusting that the old has something to say to the new, including the fact that Jesus had the wisdom to stay out of real estate. I believe that there are important things about the West Park Church that need preservation, but its building is not one of them. Their history has long been one of breaking down walls, not being defined by them. They lived their history by welcoming the homeless, marching for peace, embracing the arts, standing with and for the LGBTQ+ community when other churches were afraid to, and so much more. And they did all this, scrappy as they are, because their mission is their history, their identity, and their legacy. And their mission is what needs to be preserved. The Social Justice Fund created through this sale will enable that mission to flourish in congregations, honestly, like mine, where we serve hundreds of neighbors each week through our shelter, our soup kitchen, and social justice programs. I have many important memories in that building, and I have huge respect for everyone who has put their hearts and minds into trying to preserve it, but it hasn't worked. We need to get real here. Indeed, I recently told a student that I had done my internship at West Park, and they said, "Isn't that the church everyone is always fighting about? Is this building becoming a monument to division?" Friends, it is time to move on. Please support the West Park Church by enabling their true mission to become their focus and their future. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jack Green. I'm a lifelong Presbyterian who lives on the Upper West Side around the corner from the church. I speak in support of the hardship application. The essential question, as I understand it, is whether the building is suitable for use as a worship space by its congregation. Can the congregation, the owner of the building, support it anymore for its intended purpose? I think the answer is clear. They cannot. And they should not be forced to keep spending all of their money trying, when this application will give them an opportunity at new life and also benefit so many people in need on the Upper West Side and throughout New York City. West Park Presbyterian Church has been a force for good in the neighborhood for over 130 years. West Park is not a building. It is a congregation of faithful Presbyterians. The building they built in 1890 has worn out and is falling apart. It cannot be saved in the long term. The congregation can't support it, and that is the essential question under the landmarks law. Opponents of the application are trying to confuse the issues. There is plenty of space for the arts on the Upper West Side. Everyone who lives there knows that. There will also be additional space for arts in the contemplated mixed-use building to be built on the site. The landmarks law contains a provision allowing demolition to account for situations exactly like this one. Demolition is allowed when continuing to force the owner to maintain the building would work an unconstitutional taking. This is exactly that situation. Please grant the application so that a new building can rise, reinvigorating the corner of Amsterdam and 86th in the heart of the Upper West Side.
Good evening. I'm Reverend Mary Newbern Williams, transitional presbyter for the Presbytery of New York City. I speak as a supporter for approval of the hardship application. Empowerment for those who are impoverished and living in difficult circumstances is what our ministry embraces at West Park Presbyterian Church and in the Presbytery of New York City. It is what we do. It is what we will address to a greater extent if the hardship application is approved. As a pastor by profession and church executive new in this area for just about a 3-year period, justice, empowerment, ministry, and mission are the foci. It is what we do. With the approval, we will use the proceeds from the sale to build a new West Park Presbyterian Church for these very purposes. We will provide a social justice fund that will assist people and families in need. With the Justice Fund, we can give a hand up for those who are not financially privileged and who do not enjoy many of the basics that the rest of us take for granted: food, shelter, clothing, enjoyments. The Presbytery of New York City believes in ministry, mission, justice, and in serving God's creation with faithful commitment. Granting approval for the hardship application will provide numerous New Yorkers with the basic fundamentals of life. New York City has programs that have similar focus. We already possess a united spirit. We ask this approval for the hardship application to provide unencumbered worship space in a safe building, to provide safe meeting space for arts and educational programs, and to better the lives of many who do not have what all should enjoy. The life-enriching programs mentioned will continue so that God's plan for creation continues. Please approve the hardship application for the enhancement of life for everyone. Thank you. God bless you all.
We're going to go through everyone in person and then we're going to...
Is there any water? Oh. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Vivian. I'm an ordinary human who used to be a registered nurse, and I quit to pursue the arts. And the first building that I fell in love with was on Coney Island, the sideshow arena. It was great. I went to clown school there. And then when I left, I missed it a lot. And then I find out that it's under risk of siege. They want to bulldoze it, tear it down, and turn it into a casino, you know, for profit, right? Fine. The Coney Islanders and all of the artists and the freak show people, they won. So the casino people, they lost. So that's very good. But then Upper West Side, I stumble upon this beautiful church building, right? Amazing events, amazing people. And again, another building stole my heart. Would you look at that? I get all cozy, like in a cocoon and stuff. And then I find out that it's under risk of siege again. I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone twice in a row. So I'm really hoping that, some of the things I wrote down, it was a great speech, but I feel like it's inorganic if I just read this whole thing to you. It's just, history remembers art, not profit margins, right? Right, okay. And then profit margins never made anyone cry except maybe the artists. Ha 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 ha. Funny, right? Good line. And then the other thing about the guy that said, not directly at him, just like, let's say hypothetically, someone said something about how the building lost its original meaning. I don't know about you all, but I can't think of anything more spiritual than bringing a bunch of people into a container to express and create out of love and light. It's like, what's more spiritual than that? Kneeling? I don't think so. I don't know, but that's just me. So I am very clearly voting against granting this hardship application. I think it's really a shame that it's in question. It really is. Beautiful building, beautiful community, beautiful people. Just come on, please. That's all. Vivian, thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen and ladies. I have limited financial means, and I'm a playwright. What? Oh, my name is Anwar Suleiman. I had a play at the West Park Theater Center, February of 24. I was walking around the neighborhood, up and down, looking for a place for my play, and I struck on the West Side Center, and I was welcomed. I was encouraged, and most places were asking anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. I was given a space for $500, which I was able to afford because Social Security and Medicare actually supports me. And it actually went very well. And after the seats were sold for 4 nights, then at that point, the center cashed the check that I had given earlier. They didn't cash the check beforehand, they cashed the check afterwards. So I'm very grateful for this center. The people that came were amazed about the space that the theater that my play was in. Then some of them actually visited the theater and they were amazed at the architecture of the theater. And because of the scaffolding, they didn't know there was such a beautiful space existed. So from my selfish point of view, I ask you to maintain the center and the building, the Presbyterian Church. And of course, I have to thank you because it was not a landmark. I would not have had the chance to do my play here. So I'm asking you to continue it as a landmark for my sake and the sake of other artists. Thank you very much.
Greetings, everyone, and thank you to the commission for your faithful work and discernment. My name is Peter Cook. I'm the executive director of the New York State Council of Churches. We were founded in 1893, and we partner with 9 denominations, including our friends at the Presbyterian Church. One of the things that we're most proud of is that we advise congregations all over the state on how best to use their property to serve their community and to offer the gospel. We help a congregation to balance a variety of considerations, including their landmark designation and zoning capacity to build their capacity to build affordable housing, to do justice-oriented ministry in their community, and to preserve their financial health. We want every congregation to be wise stewards of what they have been given. The answer that makes sense is different for every property. It's not a one-size-fits-all. In the case of West Park, we have walked with this congregation for many years in their struggle. We concur with the presbytery that the most faithful action would be to approve their hardship application so that this church and this presbytery can better serve the community with a viable space and also release funds to help the community, including helping congregations in this city repurpose their property, including the building of affordable housing. I ask that you weigh all the factors, including the diverse financial claims that are being made here, very carefully to arrive at the right decision, and I pray for your faithful discernment. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Clayton Young, and I support the approval of West Park's hardship application. I've lived on the Upper West Side for 50 years. I'm an elder of a Presbyterian church 10 blocks north of West Park. I'm not an actor and I'm not a public speaker, but my passion for the social justice ministry at West Park and the New York Presbytery has given me a voice. I share with many of you a love of the Upper West Side, the rich culture, the restaurants, the parks, the liberal politics. But West Siders are also among the wealthiest in the city. There is a whole substrata of neighbors that struggle just to survive. The poor, the unhoused, immigrants, people of color. They are voiceless, invisible, neglected, and underserved. In requesting the board to approve our hardship application, West Park and the Presbytery are simply asking the board to allow us to exercise our right to pursue our ministry, which is to provide the greatest good to those in the greatest need. The purpose of the Social Justice Fund to be funded from the development of West Park is to serve our neediest neighbors. This is not a debate between the arts and the church. West Park and the Presbytery are not anti-arts. West Park hosted the Center for the Arts for many years at well below market rates, helping it to grow and flourish at the expense of its own viability. There are other churches in the Presbytery, such as Good Shepherd in Lincoln Square, that provide a home for many performing arts organizations. We Presbyterians are people of good faith who act in good faith, and I was saddened and insulted by the accusation that we're a money-grubbing, well-financed behemoth deliberately running the church into the ground for financial gain. West Park is in debt, and even if the Presbytery were to devote all its entire endowment to the restoration of West Park, it would not nearly be enough. Moreover, it would be at the expense of the 87 other Presbyterian churches we support in the 5 boroughs. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Reverend Eugene Palmore, and I am the pastor at Church of the Master in the village of Harlem. And I am supporting the approval of the hardship application that is before this board. I understand the cultural, social, and even the emotional significance of preservations for institutions like West Park. But I am also keenly reminded of how the same hardship issues concerning properties throughout Harlem that have had the same sentimental value and cultural significance were ignored and properties were razed. As my brother in Christ, Reverend Chris Shelton, just said, Jesus wasn't in the real estate business. In fact, tearing down walls and systems that held that systems are more valuable than the needs of the people was central to his counterclockwise revolution against such systems. My church is a perfect example of how clinging to old wineskins and pouring new wine into them doesn't work. New wineskins doesn't mean that the work will not be done. It doesn't even mean that it won't be good work. It just means that it just gets a fresh start.
All right. Good evening. I'm Simeon Bankoff. I am a preservation consultant with the Center at West Park. Prior to launching my own consultancy, I was the executive director for the Historic Districts Council for 21 years. This is my third hardship. I've got to say that this is as unpersuasive an application as the Stahl case that it is based on. The numbers don't make sense, especially once you figure into it the notion that the offer that's on the table for renting the space as well as restoring the exterior. New ideas need old buildings. And this is a prime example of this. In places across the state and across the country that I've talked to, they're always like, oh, we've got an old building, let's put a community theater in it. And I say, no, don't do that. That's ridiculous. You can never raise money with the community theater. Here is actually an example where a not-for-profit community theater is actually raising the money needed. It is a shining model of that and something that could inspire things across the city and the country. Finally, with regards to the proposed draft, I was very pleased to hear that it's only a proposed draft. I do recommend that the committee takes a close look at that because the draft as it's currently written really skips about 3 parts into the decision tree and starts addressing something that is going to happen, should it happen, 3 steps along the way. I think that really is an example of kind of robbing yourself of an opportunity to engage with the process fully. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Madeline Paquette. I'm the resident producer at the Center at West Park, and I'd like to speak to the strong demonstrated evidence that West Park Presbyterian Church is adequate, suitable, and appropriate for carrying out its current and historical charitable use. The evidence is clear. Since 2018, the center has welcomed over 60,000 audience members, including more than 25,000 since 2024. It has hosted over 800 performances and events, 350 in the last year and a half, and thousands of hours of rehearsals for artists at all stages of career and classes for students of all ages. The wonderful congregation at Lighthouse Chapel utilizes almost the entire building for services and programs every Sunday. An average day might feature a film screening in the sanctuary, a subsidized rehearsal for $10 an hour in the chapel and downstairs dance studios, a meeting of our writing workshop or our puppetry residency in the second floor studio, dances for children on the top floor, and Cosmo, who we heard from, painting in his studio. It's true that there are other art spaces on the Upper West Side. This is New York City. It is a home for the arts, but there is no other space on the Upper West Side with 7 spaces with such unique, wide variety of uses under one roof where market rate rentals are able to subsidize affordable space for artists at all stages of their careers. The center provided this for me before I worked here for my theater company, Moxie Arts NY, which was incubated at the center and has gone on to win awards for supporting women and non-binary artists in the arts. Finally, I'd like to speak to the idea this space is not safe, because you know who has been producing arts programming at the center since we were evicted in July? It's West Park Presbyterian Church. Just this month in the sanctuary, they hosted their annual West Park International Music Festival on the 11th. You can go on the Facebook page for the West Park open mic that they run, and you can see a Facebook live stream of their open mic from this last Friday. So the idea that they're up here arguing that this space can't be used for its intended purpose when members of their congregation are using it for its intended purpose is hard for me to understand as a person who works in the arts in New York City. So I hope that you all will see the value of this space as a home for the artists that we want to be supporting the entertainment industry in New York City for years to come. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Kat Belfer, and I've worked at the Center at West Park for over 2 years. But tonight I speak to you not only as a dedicated employee, but as a university student and young artist navigating New York City. I recognize that I'm part of a younger generation than most attendees here tonight, and I want to argue that my generation and those after me need this community space more than anyone. I'm not an Upper West Sider like many attendees here tonight, but I choose to call this place my home regardless because I've felt the impact of this space and this community deeply. I've seen incredible performances and met talented people from all walks of life, whether they are established A-listers or up-and-coming artists like myself. None of this would be possible without the opportunities that the Center at West Park provides. Spaces like these are increasingly rare, buildings rich in both history and in arts, culture, and community. As a student of the performing arts, I know it can be next to impossible to get your foot in the door when it comes to showcasing your talents. But programs the center provides, namely the Evolution Festival, our subsidized rehearsal spaces, and affordable rental spaces for performances, give anyone with enough love and passion for what they do a chance to play out for larger audiences and start their journey as a performer. I've witnessed some of the best and most creative talents of our time through programs like this. Every day, I walked through the 86th Street doors, viewed performances from the back of the sanctuary, and happily greeted eager patrons of our many programs. I was and still am reminded that this mission is bigger than myself. When we were forced to leave, I cried hopeless tears thinking that our brave cause had failed. But I still have hope that with the help of this community, we'll return to this essential space, and those hopeless tears will turn into ones of joy and promise. The center is not just a building. It is a home for so many people, myself and my community members included. By taking that away, you would be complicit in destroying that home for thousands of people who feel as strongly as I do, and the impact will be felt for many years to come. I implore the Landmarks Committee to think not solely about the present, but about the future of artists and performers like me looking for a place to belong. Thank you.
Hello, I'm
Just talking.
okay, all right, good. I'm Cecilia Bloor, an Upper West Sider, 6th generation, and a member of Second Presbyterian Church on West 96th Street. I speak in support of West Park's hardship application. I'd like to first address some of the vituperative accusations against West Park, its congregation, that I heard earlier this month and this evening, that the congregation is trying to cold-bloodedly deprive the community of a treasured building for the sake of profit. Whatever makes you think that the congregation isn't suffering this loss as well? A church building is a site of life's milestones, weddings, baptisms, funerals. It's where we go to make sense of the loss of love or of a job, or to discern what we need to do in the next phase of our lives. We call a church a home and its congregation family. There is always great sadness for a congregation to give up a building. So here's a verse from the prophet Isaiah. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I quote this not just because it's appropriate to the moment, but also to remind everybody that we are talking about a church and its property. However much a church may enrich the neighborhood through the arts, The arts which infuse our very worship services are always subordinate to the church's higher purpose. No outside organization is entitled to dictate the church's mission, and to try to do so represents a Trumpian lack of boundaries. West Park has a long legacy of social witness that it wishes to continue. You have ample professional evidence on the perilous state of the property, and the church's finances. We are all sad. We all mourn. But now let's look forward to God's new thing. Thank you.
I am the Reverend Robert Foltz Morrison. I'm the former executive of the Presbyterian of New York City, whose office sits in the Interchurch Center across from Riverside Church. I want to speak in support of the hardship clause of the West Park Church. The late Reverend Robert Brashear, West Park's last pastor, and I knew each other over many decades. He and the congregation embraced a long social justice history to love God and to love their neighbors and to provide spiritual meaning and hope, whether it was the houseless persons at the door, a person who wanted an open mic, who was a poet, or the creative experience of the arts. He led Bible studies and worship and took personal sacrifices to pursue his calling in Christ with this congregation on the Upper West Side. A previous vision to retain the sanctuary and provide housing was undercut by landmarking the building over the objections of the pastor and the congregation. People commend constitutional separation of church and state, but this workaround with preservation has resulted in 25 years of scaffolding surrounding the building due to the absence of adequate funding from the congregation, its programs, and the community to maintain a landmark building. It's time to let go of the building and follow the new vision ahead that Reverend Brashear, the congregation, and the 89 churches in the presbytery have already approved. Before his death, I knew he bemoaned members of the community he well knew as his neighbors, denigrating congregation and presbytery, some accusations coming from people who did not live here nor understood the religious corporation law in the state of New York or Presbyterian polity. But what he and the congregation could see ahead was a continuation of extending its social justice mindedness for more than just the Upper West Side, for the city of New York. Different people have different ideas about West Park. Mine is centered in the mission and the rights of a church in the community, in its love for God and its neighbors, including those of you here who disagree with the request for hardship. Thank you.
For individuals who are joining us on Zoom and want to testify, please use the link to sign up that was placed in the chat. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Catherine Altkeener. I wrote a fabulous letter to CB7. I had no idea that meant I was going to present it tonight, so I don't have the letter with me, but I researched this. Can you hear me now? All right. I'm Catherine Altkeener. I had no idea I was going to be speaking tonight. I wrote a letter. I don't have the letter with me, but I did a lot of research about this church. And, you know, in Europe, they take such good care of old churches. Here in New York City, we tear them down. Why is that? We have a perfect example of Romanesque revival architecture that students should learn about in a book. They should not see it. I don't know how big this congregation is. I've heard it's 10 people. Is that right? It's 10. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
This is not a question and answer.
Okay, it's not a question and answer. I've heard that it's a congregation of 10 people, and there is mendacity at work here. What are they doing now? Where are they meeting now? What is the social justice they are doing now? They want to wreck the neighborhood by building this building, which, by the way, will have no affordable housing in it, which means it will be pied-à-terres for Europeans. This is ridiculous. It's a beautiful church. There is no leaking. The center, which they evicted, so they're hardship. So they evicted their tenants, so they now have no income from that. Had the resources to take down that hideous scaffolding sidewalk shed, and they said no, they would not sign the papers to take down the scaffolding. I'm sorry, hardship is not a word that applies in this situation. We do not need another disgusting, drab, glass and chrome building on the corner of 86 in Amsterdam, where this beautiful church has stood for 135 years. I'm passionate about this.
Hello, my name is Lindy Callan. I'm a lifelong Upper West Sider. I'm reminded of the Dylan Thomas poem, "Do not go gentle into that good night, rage, rage against the dying of the light." I understand this is an extremely complex issue. I hope I'm on the correct side of it, but I oppose the hardship application because I have seen too much of the developer's paradise on the island of Manhattan. I've not to go very far into Central Park and look south, and I see those tall towers, some of which were just thrown up rather quickly, and they're eyesores, and they're not, they weren't safely built. And I was taught in school, ask who wrote the book and why, follow the money. And I do not think that developers need more on this island. I think we need to preserve the beauty of what we have. Too many churches and synagogues have gone under the bulldozer. And when the Museum of Natural History wanted to build that connecting thing, I thought it was a good idea. And my husband said, I oppose it. I asked why, and he said, they're going to tear down mature trees. And I said, okay, but that's, you know, that's part of what happens when you need to build something new. And he said, they can do better. They can make a plan that takes down fewer mature trees. We see what's happening now at the White House. Same kind of thing. You don't need to just, thank you. You don't need to wreck something in order to have beauty. Just please think about a better way of preserving this. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Noah Likling. I'm a lifelong Upper West Sider and married to a deacon of the Presbyterian Church. I speak with urgency and conviction to oppose the joint application filed by the West Park Administrative Commission and Alchemy Partners seeking de-landmarking and demolition of the West Park Presbyterian Church. Let's be clear, Alchemy Partner principals are not members of this community, not residents of New York City, and not stewards of its history. They have no connection to the Upper West Side or its civic life. The claim that repair is impossible ignores both precedent and potential. To grant this hardship claim would send a chilling message that any landmark can be destroyed if ownership neglects maintenance long enough, then pleads poverty. That's not preservation, that is abdication. The law does not require the city to reward deliberate deterioration with the demolition permit. Moreover, the partnership between the church and the Alchemy Partners raises troubling question. The developers' filings state plainly that the demolition is contingency on the sales contract. Their intent is not restoration, but replacement. The new structure would include retail space and luxury residences with only a token 10,000 square foot area offered back to the congregation. This is not adaptive reuse. It is commodification of sacred ground. Community Board 7 and the Landmarks Preservation Commission, I plead to you, you must affirm that history and architecture and community matter more than short-term profit. I urge you to reject the de-landmarking and hardship application in its entirety. Instead, convene the many organizations who stand ready to assist in finding a sustainable community-based future for West Park. Let us remember, once a landmark falls, it can never rise again. The West Park Church has stood through wars, depression, and pandemics. It deserves more than demolition. It deserves our stewardship. To preserve it is to preserve the soul of the Upper West Side. Thank you kindly for your time.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daria Karadas. I'm a mechanical engineer and I work in the city. I frequent the church very frequently as I come to see basically every single show that they put on. The first time I ever had gone in there was to see a production of Crime and Punishment. For those of you that may not be aware of it, it's a book written in the 1800s about a man who decides to take the fate of another person into his own hands because he does a cost-benefit analysis and decides that he knows what's best. And then he has to suffer through the consequences of his decision and basically write it out into salvation. We kind of are falling into the same pitfall that Raskolnikov fell into with deciding to tear down a beautiful building that's been around for, like someone else said, 130 years, and replacing it with another set of luxury condos that will basically not accomplish the needed desire to bring affordable housing, because it almost never does. And we basically remove, by doing that, we remove a beautiful historical part of the city that kind of meets, that merges old and new. It roots us and anchors us from where we came from and guides us into where we want to go into the future. When we remove these historical landmarks, it's always one at a time. We lose the battle on this one, and then the next one, it's going to be the next one that loses the battle. And before we know it, there's going to be no old buildings left. And I'm sure there are people that decided to remove Penn Station at the time. We could have, and there were people that wanted to remove Grand Central. What would New York City look like today without Grand Central? We need to make sure that we do our part and be the stewards that we need to be to keep the city vibrant and alive and just merging with old and new, because just because it's old doesn't mean it doesn't deserve to exist anymore.
Chuck Gropper, Upper West Sider. Yeah, can you hear me now? Okay. Chuck Gropper, Upper West Sider. There's a reason why the overwhelming majority of people here and at the last meeting are opposed to this application and do not believe in such a hardship. The reason is because there isn't one. Okay. You've heard testimony at the prior meeting, expert testimony as to the cost of rehabbing the building. It's nowhere near what the applicant claims it to be. What is the benefit of granting this hardship application? For a for-profit builder of a condominium, period. This church must be preserved. My wife, Catherine Gropper, couldn't be here tonight, but I just want to read a few things that she had said and submitted. As a resident of the Upper West Side, I strongly believe New York City must keep intact the center at West Park, as well as its home at the West Park Presbyterian Church. As a playwright, all of my plays have had their starts in churches. Salome Jens opened at the St. Peter's Church at Citicorp. A recent play with Frank Wood and Kelly Karan was at the Theater for St. Clements. Personally, I find it quite spiritual and human knowing that part of the other interior spaces at the church hold worship. I firmly believe that people that want to pray together and act together fosters creativity. The creative energy flourishes there. As an artist, poet, playwright, and lifelong believer in preserving architecturally significant structures, which this is, as well as maintaining natural resources against overdevelopment, I am imploring you to reject the application for hardship and recognize the need at hand and serve the community that you represent. Thank you very much.
Good evening, members of the community board. My name is Robert Feinstein. I'm on the board of the Center at West Park. I want to speak directly to you. 3 years ago, you saw the same application and denied it. Nothing's changed except for the good. 60,000 people have attended hundreds of performances at the church. It is a vibrant community arts center. It has only gotten better over time. It survived an earthquake. It doesn't leak. This is about harm to the neighborhood. Your mission as the community board, as I understand it, is to represent and advocate for the people of the Upper West Side. The Landmark Commission makes the ultimate determination, but your recommendation is important. This community, the Upper West Side, will be a net loser if you grant this application, because as noted, the developer is going to condominiumize a building, sell it in pieces, and walk off with a lot of money. The congregation is virtually non-existent. The Presbytery, the Greater Presbytery, has taken over this process to get $30 million into their coffers. It's not coming back to the Upper West Side. Okay, it's going to be used for a variety of purposes, but the Social Justice Fund will trickle out a few dollars, and maybe those few dollars will be in the Upper West Side, but maybe they won't. So we will lose a landmark building, we will lose a community arts center, and the value is going to be taken out of the Upper West Side and go to the developer and to people in other boroughs. You should protect the Upper West Side by denying the application on the merits, and it's faulty on the merits, so you have the grounds to do that. Thank you for your time.
Hello, everyone. I'm David Madge. I've been a resident of the Upper West Side since 1984. Because of 3 golden words, rent-controlled apartment, I've worked at Barney Greengrass, the Sturgeon King, for 34 years. Some of you know me from that. If you don't know me from that, you'll know me from potato latkes. Who wants some? Fresh OJ. Just squeezed 12 minutes ago. So I met Lorna and I met Debbie at Barney Greengrass, and I said, I'm looking for a space to play racquetball, pickleball, whatever. They said, you can play pickleball at our space. You can play in the morning. I won't charge you $80 an hour, which is what they charge you every other place. I'll only charge you $20 an hour. I said, okay, good. I had a young man who I was a big brother with, and I decided to play pickleball with him. At first, it was very hard to get him up. I had to pull him out of bed, et cetera, et cetera. After a while, he started getting into it. After a while, he was waiting for me at the space to play pickleball at 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. After maybe another 4 or 5 months, maybe after 128 games, he actually beat me once. So, but this boy also now, he wants to be a ranger in the Army. He's in Fort Bragg in South Carolina. And I think a little part of it, maybe just one pearl out of a whole necklace, is my being able to use the space because of Lorna, because of Debbie letting me use it for a very reasonable rate. Now, there's also something that's being said about not safe. I don't know about the structure of the space. All I know is it seemed okay to me at 5:30 in the morning, but I do know it was very safe. They had somebody there. I could tell you 2 stories before I leave. I said to Debbie once the space was going to be gone. I said, Debbie, well, why can't I still use? I said, Debbie, you just put a new air conditioner in there. I said, if you're going to be gone, you're going to be gone soon. Why did you have a new air conditioner? She said, it's because I want the kids to to not be hot in the summer. This was this past summer. I want the kids not to be hot. Okay. And I guess the last story I wanted to say, I'll forget about it right now. We'll maybe talk about that another time. And we're moving on.
Let the choir say amen. Good evening, everyone. My name is Noel Ellison, and I'm here to support the hardship application of West Park Presbyterian Church. As a person who grew up in the Upper West Side during the first 20 years of my life, I am well aware that West Park has been part of this neighborhood's history for over a century. For so many people, it is where they found comfort in hard times, where kids sang in choirs, where neighbors gathered for meals and community programs. It's always been more than just a building. It's been a place of care and connection. But the truth is, the building is in serious decline. The small congregation that remains simply doesn't have the resources needed to keep up with the enormous cost of maintaining a landmark structure. Every patch and repair feels like a futile effort in a losing battle. The focus has shifted from serving people to just trying to hold the place together. That is not, and I repeat, that is not what a church is meant to be. The plan before us offers us a chance to change that. By lifting the landmark status, the church can move forward, and funds from redevelopment will be overseen by a fund committee to support community service and social initiative ministries throughout the city. That means the spirit of West Park, its missions for compassion and service, can live on, not just here, but across New York. This isn't about losing a landmark. It's about giving new life to the values that made West Park matter in the first place. Thank you.
My name's Don France. I'm a member of the 150-year-old congregation who owns the building in question. I'm asking for the waiver. I'm also producer, general manager for Broadway, off-Broadway, international theater productions. The topic is economic viability of the building as a church and as a cultural center, which is what the congregation created. I supervised the conversion of the building from a church only to performance and rehearsal spaces. I interviewed other established off-Broadway theater owners and show producers, profit and nonprofit, for help. It looks glorious. I love the building, but a professional sees the faults and they see the dollars. West Park Presbyterian started the Center for West Park because there were no other takers. The statements about the glorious culture center and $20 pickleball and all the performances for 7+ years is an illusion. Sadly, it's a fantasy. It's an illusion that you all have been enjoying, because less than $2,900 a month was paid on the books by center management to the church. So less than the church's insurance bill. To keep the center operating and to give you that cheap space, free space, the church went broke. The management could not even open up a bank account for the $0 in the exterior renovation. Sadly, it's time for reality. So why did the professionals not want the building? Why did the church's nonprofit fail to make it a go? The model we hoped for was at St. Clement's, Actors Chapel, many other churches around the country, but they are all much, much smaller. The church aptly promotes cheap space for artists. It's not a gift. It's because it is cheap space. The potential renter has to worry about air conditioning. In the daylight, flood comes through the windows. I had a show there, I couldn't do a matinee. Fire and ambulance sirens are heard screaming up Amsterdam. I took in a director, can we work here? Bah, 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 bah. No, we can't. There's no sound barriers. There's bathroom stalls on the first and third floor, not the second one. The waiver from Actors Equity Association for professional actors will be challenged because there's not enough space or private bathrooms. The sanctuary acoustics are bad. Thank you.
Oh, you go ahead. You do your speech first.
Hello. I'm not used to microphones, so tell me if it sounds weird. Loud. Okay, louder. Okay. My name is Lisa Harrison. I've lived on the Upper West Side for over 35 years, and I've walked by West Park Presbyterian Church more times than I can count. And every time I walk by there, I feel compelled to just stop and reflect on how lucky we are to have this beautiful, unique building in our neighborhood, just sitting there right on the corner. There are so few modern examples of beautiful architecture. We see tall glass buildings springing up all over the city like giant needles. The building has clearly been neglected for many years, and having it cleaned up and restored will take some time. The center at West Park plans to do just that. And frankly, that should be enough to keep the landmark status. But in addition, they will also use the building as a performance and community space, which would be a perfect fit for this neighborhood. Whereas the last thing we need is another tall building full of luxury condos. There is no hardship here. There is a buyer who will restore the building and create a welcoming, inclusive space that will benefit our community. There is no reason to remove the landmark. I urge Community Board 7 to reject the bogus hardship application and preserve this beautiful church, which is so loved and appreciated and absolutely deserves to be a designated landmark. Thank you.
Hello. The center at West Park is the lifeblood. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, my name is Valerie David. Thank you. The center at West Park is the lifeblood and pulse of the Upper West Side. The center at West Park must not be demolished. What it has brought to our community, to myself, to all New Yorkers, and to visitors to our cities is beyond what I could ever fully express in words. It is a sanctuary for our community and everyone who walks through its doors, giving a voice to the arts in music, film, theater, education, and more, with affordable rehearsal space, performance space, classes for artists and community members, and educational programs. Since its inception, it's been a home to More Light movement, God's Love We Deliver, and the Shakespeare Center, and many other historic organizations. I myself have been an actor there, performing on the sanctuary stage. As an audience member, I've attended countless events, including concerts, plays, films, puppetry shows, and storytelling events, and so many new works developed. And personally, what it means to me, I am a 27-year cancer survivor and still a patient, and lived through 3 diagnoses on the Upper West Side, and I live with cancer every day. The joy the center at West Park has brought me with its arts and culture programming and performing during the hardest times of my life, my hardship, is priceless. Arts heal, and center at West Park did that for me. It helped me heal. It truly helped me survive. It helps so many. Please keep this arts haven alive like it did for me. Let it survive for generations to come. If this landmark haven of arts and culture is destroyed, the landscape of the Upper West Side will be permanently altered, and it will be the death to vital and much needed arts and culture, and a safe space for all of us. I pray that you will find it in your hearts to preserve.
Hi there. My name is Lorna Shamroth. I've lived on the Upper West Side for 25 years. I have 4 children. I just wanted to speak to the CB7 board. First of all, thank you for hearing us speak today. I also just wanted to tell you that if you notice, the people who are talking on behalf of the Center at West Park, we're all part of the community. We're mothers, we're fathers, we're working at Barney Greengrass, we're local vendors. And the people who are speaking on behalf of the presbytery, they're pastors. They don't live in the neighborhood. The majority of people here are the neighborhood. So I plead with you to listen to us, because this is our community. And also, I would also ask you to please, have you visited the center? Have you visited the church? Have you gone inside? Have all of you gone inside? Have all of you gone inside and seen inside? Okay, sorry. And if you have, I find it hard to believe that you would see the church and then think to yourself, I feel comfortable in being part of the demolition. And like your legacy of knocking down a landmark building for your children, for your children's children, how I just find that hard to believe that you'd be comfortable with that. There's not many things in your lifetime that you could actually have an effect on. You could actually do something in your lifetime to save a building. That's more than anyone else can do in their lifetime. I would love to be in your position to say that I saved a landmark building as opposed to building a high rise. You guys are lucky that you have this choice. So think about it when you make this decision. Would you rather build a high rise or would you rather save a landmark building that's 135 years old? That's something I would tell my kids about. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi, yes, thank you. My name is Antoinette Caniglio. I live on the Upper West Side for the past 40 years. And I really want to say, first of all, I'm shocked that here at a community meeting, a community board, we have been preached at by Ezekiel the prophet for profit ministers who are using a public meeting to indoctrinate us with their religion and then their artificial plea that they have a social justice plan. Where is their social justice in embracing the community that is asking them to cooperate? They have not said that they will cooperate. They could be given a space in the sanctuary to continue the church, the legacy of the church and its original landmark building, but they want to tear it down and take the money away from the community and build another rectangle that is a crown jewel building. I've raised 3 sons in this community. They've gone to public school. And when they would walk home from school, they would look at that building and say, this is my neighborhood. There's that red stone building. Should they ever have gotten lost when they were little? That was their landmark building. That was their North Star. So everybody here has the opportunity to work together for the Presbyterian Church to stop crying poor. They ran the church into the ground operating tax-free. And now their biggest claim is, well, we let it go. We wouldn't pitch in and pay for it. We've got 10 people who now we have the right to make the judgment against the entire community rather than working with the community. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Good evening. My name is Petra Shoulder. Can you all hear me without the mic? No? Okay. All right. Hi, my name is Petra Shoulder. Better? Hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I think we have 2 issues. I think this church situation, it's an endemic situation. Churches have been taken over by builders all over the city, including the Elizabeth Street Park that they won. Okay, builders have gone rampant to build condos for rich people. This is one of many, many. You, ladies and gentlemen of the commission, it's called the Landmarks Preservation Commission. Therefore, in your name is preservation. Therefore, you have a mission to preserve, okay? So number 1, I am begging you, try to preserve this beautiful church, all right? It's been mismanaged, obviously, okay? But it has wonderful programs for the community, And that's what you need to please keep in mind, the wonderful programs that it has had. It has some funds, okay, which have been mismanaged, okay? Now they're getting their act together, right? All right, so please try to keep it in mind because the community does not need another condo for rich people, It won't help the people who need apartments. It won't help anybody to have more rich people in this neighborhood, all right? So that is my plea. That is all I can ask of you, to please consider your basic mission of preservation of these beautiful old buildings, all right? Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Hi, my name is Sari Roboff, and I have been looking at the church out my window for the 35 plus years that I've lived across the street. I moved in 1990. The church was already suffering from not having been reinvested in and taken care of at the time. And it was only a few years after that that the scaffolding went up. So I want to talk about a couple of things briefly. One is all the church architecture all over Europe that this church brings to this country as a Romanesque revival church built by a student of one of the most prominent Boston architects who built churches in Boston, but this is built of a red stone instead, which is a challenge. It makes it even more beautiful. There's a reason why the European churches were built in Gothic and Romanesque architectures. It's because they are spiritually, religiously inspiring. And this church, I look up and I am looking at the heavens and smiling. And there's something very human scale about it, despite its height. It feels like it's built for people. That is point one. Point two is, I'm not quite sure what this argument is about. The original estimates and even the most recent estimates that the church's engineers, who are all focused on new buildings, have provided are contrary to what the Landmarks Commission's engineer, who's one of the top old building engineers in the country, estimated. Okay, so it's going to cost $2 to $3 million, not 50. And the church is ready. I mean, I'm sorry. Well, some people went on. Let me just finish. I did not know that was the limit. I will sum up. If there is the likelihood of an exchange, if the church wants to sell, there's money being raised for tens of millions of dollars, maybe not 33, and the church can stay and take the money and use it however they want. They don't get highest and best use. I'm done. They have no right to highest and best use, just good use.
Okay. That's okay. I think the microphone. Okay. Hi, I'm Katerina. I've had the privilege of working and volunteering at the arts or the center at West Park for the last 7 to 8 months. First, I would like to say to all the people that are for tearing it down, I would implore you to actually talk to people, to me, to Debbie, to anybody who actually works or spends a lot of time at the center at West Park. I have been there at 6 a.m. I have toured with the engineers and the architects. It might have a few wrinkles, some stretch marks. You know, it is old, but it is not falling down and it is not beyond repair. So I just wanted to say that, but then also a little bit of my story, and I'll talk fast. So 2 years ago, I moved to New York from Minnesota with a dream. I wanted to make it in the fashion industry and to learn about myself in ways I never could back home. I wanted to try something different, to grow, and to step outside my comfort zone. I moved here without knowing anyone, and as other transplants will understand, it can feel pretty lonely sometimes. This past March, I was scrolling through Eventbrite for something to do on a Sunday afternoon when I came across an event about JFK Jr. about John F. Kennedy Jr. His former chief of staff and her co-writer were giving a talk just a few blocks from where I live at the West Park Presbyterian Church. I've always been fascinated by the Kennedys, so I thought, why not? For just $5, which was whatever I could pay, I ended up with a front row seat, a free book, and the chance to hear people who actually knew him to share their stories. So in a city where so much feels out of reach, that evening reminded me that community, learning, and connection can still be accessible. Listening to other people's stories, expanding your perspective, and continuing to learn is vital to who we are and who we become. That's what drew me to the Center at West Park, the organization that brings life, art, and opportunity to this historic space. Since then, it's become, okay. Just wanted to say, New York is a place to be different, so why would we want the neighborhood to look like a suburb?
Good evening. My name is Deborah Kosakoff, and I'm a member of the Upper West Side community. And I've heard several people speak tonight about the good works that the Presbytery has been doing. And I support those works. However, I don't think you need to tear down a landmark building, which was landmarked because it was deemed to have architectural significance in order to accomplish those good works. I think they're not mutually exclusive things, and I think this community can have both. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Julia Harrington Reddy, and I've lived on the Upper West Side for about 25 years. I'd just like to say to our friends in the Presbytery, it's a very difficult and sad situation to be in, to have many historic buildings to look after, to have a social justice mission and not have enough money to carry out everything that you would like to. But please come back to the table and talk. I really believe that the Center for West Park has created such a powerful sense of community and has so many people who are so dedicated. It may not be $33 million tomorrow like a rich developer could give you, but I think the money will be there to maintain the building, to restore the building, and to pay a generous rent. So please don't look at it as a hardship. Look at it as a continuation of your social justice mission, and come to the table and talk about money and see what we can come up with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to move to testimony on Zoom now. We're not going to be able to see them, but I promise they're there, and we will get to hear what they have to say. We're going to begin with Marcia Flowers, who will be followed by Nathaniel Christian.
You need to unmute. Marcia, you're muted.
Person. I'll figure this out. Okay, I'm unmuted. Very good. I'm Marcia Flowers, and I have been a member and a officer of West Park Presbyterian Church for over 30 years. I lived and continue to live through the time of trying to preserve this building. And it has taken everything that we have had. It has worn us out as a congregation. I've heard tonight that being a congregation of 10 people I'm sorry, it does. And some issues about throwing our religious feelings out. It has to. Oh yeah. Well, our faith and this building is a house our faith. And we have done that to the best of our abilities and as we our obligations. This building is not the church. It houses a worship. It is not what makes us a worshiping community. I urge the committee to grant the hardship application. I'm sure that there's much more negotiation that will need to go on, but we've got to start someplace. This building should never have been landmarked. It was done over our objections with the full knowledge that we did not have the money to maintain the building. So I urge the commission to please honor the application for hardship.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Nathaniel Christian.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Nathaniel Christian. I'm the moderator-elect of the Presbyterian of New York City, and I'm a longtime member of Eastchester Presbyterian Church in the Bronx. My small church's community would be a direct beneficiary of the Social Justice Fund that will be set up by West Park if the hardship application is in fact approved. For many years, we've been active in the community, feeding the food insecure, providing daycare and supplementary education for children of poor families, but we lost 25% of our active members during the pandemic. And because of dwindling resources, we have had to cut back on our service to our community. It is service to the poor that Eastchester and other Presbyterian churches throughout the city will be supported by the Social Justice Fund. And while I am loath to make political statements, as I believe that politics corrupts everything it touches, I must say that it's a shame that West Park's desire to exercise its rights of self-determination has been so terribly politicized. And in this month of October, when many have recognized Indigenous Peoples Day and the right of a community to its own history, I'm saddened by the efforts of outsiders to appropriate the history of this wonderful church that has been done here on the Upper West Side. These outsiders have sought to appropriate West Park's history through celebrity, fancy slogans, and a campaign to smear the intentions of West Park's congregation and the presbytery. And even in a democracy, as we have all seen in this environment, there's a tyranny of the majority of which we have to guard ourselves against. In closing, West Park is asking for the right to continue to serve the Upper West Side and the city as a whole in the way it deems best, and that it should continue to help support the arts in a more sustainable structure and help the tens of millions of dollars of aid to the poorest of New Yorkers through the efforts of churches such as Eastchester Presbyterian Church and other sibling churches in our city. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Susan. But if your name is Judy Samuels, please raise your hand in the Zoom so we can find you. Next is Susan Sullivan.
Hi, I'm Susan. I've lived in the neighborhood for 30 years, and since 2002, I've worked to help save West Park. It's undeniable that it is due to the intentional neglect of the presbytery and its current refusal to permit the center at West Park to make the required roof and facade repairs that we are all here tonight. Clearly, the presbytery has failed to be a good neighbor to the Upper West Side community. There's been so much disinformation. I would like to quickly address everything, so I'll do it quickly. A contract is a contract. The presbytery signed a contract for the center at West Park to rent that space, the church space, in 2018, which at that time was probably over market, given the fact that without Gail Brewer's help, we would not have a boiler to provide heat. There are two claims by the presbytery which require everyone in good faith to rebut. First is that the building is not in safe condition. The building is 135 years old, and of course, it needs repairs, but it is disingenuous to say that it must be demolished. As Mitch stated earlier, Center at West Park has the money to make the necessary repairs, and at the last CB7 meeting, we came to the meeting with checks in hand. If we accept the premise that every historic building that needs work should be demolished, that makes the landmark preservation law a joke, completely defunct. Since 2020, Center West Park has invested $500K in repairs. We've invested $70,000 in equipment upgrades. We've paid over $300,000 in architect fees, $20K per month while CWP was in residence to keep the building going. Second, the premise that the building is no longer being used for its original intent is patently untrue. As Madeline stated earlier, Lighthouse Chapel worships at West Park every weekend. I've attended a service there myself. The Center at West Park has infused life into this historic building by honoring the church's original 1880 mandate to serve its community. Thank you so much for the time to speak to you.
Hear from Michelle Cave and Jason Zakai. Jason, I think you should be able to unmute yourself and begin.
Good evening. My name is Jason Zakai. I'm a land use attorney from the law firm Hiller PC, and I represent the Center at West Park. I rise in opposition to the hardship application, and there are many reasons to oppose the application, and we have addressed them in written submissions to the board. Since I'm limited to only 2 minutes tonight, I will focus my remarks on the standard for the reasonable return analysis. Specifically, the applicant's calculation is based upon the wrong equation and is not supported by the landmarks law. The costs of renovation are not part of this analysis. Under section 25-309 of the landmarks law, the applicant must demonstrate that the landmark building is incapable of generating a reasonable return. Under 25-302 of the law, reasonable return is defined as the net annual return of 6% of the valuation of the improvement parcel. Net annual return is the revenue minus operating expenses, excluding mortgage, interest, and amortization, with an allowance of 2% depreciation for the building's assessed value. Importantly, valuation is defined in section 25-302 of the landmarks law as simply the current assessed valuation established by the city. Thus, the proper formula for determining reasonable return is the numerator is revenue minus expenses over a denominator of the current city appraised value of the land and building. That's it. The applicant has been using an incorrect formula and has been arguing that the valuation should be based on both the city appraised value and the cost of the restoration of the building. This is wrong, and it's not what the landmarks law says. The cost of renovation is not a factor in the valuation analysis. Under the formula used by the applicant, there would be a dollar-for-dollar increase in the value based upon how much it costs to repair the building. That would make it virtually impossible to reach the 6% threshold for a reasonable return.
Sorry to. Next, we will be hearing from Russ Jennings or Laura Jervis. And I'll remind folks on Zoom that if you would like to speak, please use the link to sign up. Russ, please begin.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Russ Jennings. I am the president of the congregation at West Park Presbyterian Church, and have for many years been on the session, which is our congregational kind of governance body. And so I've been around when we're talking about how are we going to pay for this, how are we going to pay for that, all the discussions you have when you have a small church. We, I on the other hand, I'm very grateful to the Landmark Commission and to this body for feeling that their purpose is to support the memory of and the importance of art from previous ages. The architects that built this church did a beautiful job with it. It's a gorgeous building. I do understand that. A church, however, has also a fundamental reason for being here, and that is that we are supposed to love our neighbors as ourselves, and even go as far as to love our enemies. And at some point, when you're shrinking to the size that we have shrunk to, which is actually more like 5 than 10, we meet on Zoom every week for Bible study, and on Monday, and for church on Sunday. And we are still maintaining our community such that it is, but we do not have the capability to refurbish this church. And it's really not our mission statement anyway. If we can pass that off and extract some resources from the church that can do better good than we're remotely capable of doing, that's what we want to do. And we really appreciate your attention to this. We hope that you'll see the value of our community.
Okay, next we have Nydia Leaf. If we have Laura Jervis, we can go to Laura Jervis.
Yes. Thank you. My name is Laura Jervis. I have lived and worked in the Upper West Side for exactly 50 years. I am speaking in favor of West Park's hardship application. My long story with the church credits me as one of the most reliable voices to speak on the true timeline of events. My association with this church began in 1975 when I was a parish associate and continued until 1993. I was present in the church house when the ceiling on the second story collapsed. Only for the grace of God was no one injured. This was the beginning of the many attempts to shore up the massive, unforgiving building. In the meantime, the church's endowment was being drained monthly, forcing the congregation to sell the 2 manses for clergy and reduce staff. All of these measures were to no avail. The church continued to be a hazard to the congregation and the community. Enter landmarks in 2010. The congregation of West Park vigorously opposed landmarking the church. It was landmarked anyway. During the landmark hearings, elected officials and some neighbors gave wild commitments to assist the church financially. It turns out these were empty promises. No help was forthcoming. The congregation has continued over these many years to save the building amidst dwindling numbers and resources, and now with no permanent pastor for 8 years. The building meets none of modern safety standards. The exterior.
We're going to go to Nydia Leaf next.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, please begin.
All right, my name is Nydia Leaf. I've lived most of my life on the Upper West Side, at least 77 years, except for a few years when I lived in California, where I was the education director for a food co-op promoting organic food. In those days, which was the late 70s, early 80s, it was laughed at. I think organic foods have triumphed in today's world. I'm speaking to urge you to think about other aspects that haven't been raised tonight. When I came back from California, I could look up and see stars only in Central Park, and I haven't even seen those lately. I have not seen any butterflies in any of the tree pits where flowers are planted. We're losing something and tearing down an amazing church where I saw a production of Lysistrata during the Afghan War that was a combination of professional actors and women from a shelter. It was better than anything that Euripides could have imagined. I've seen other productions here that are thrilling. And I worked in the Broadway theater
in the early 1950s, straight out of college. I have very strong feelings about the community. I know that you do too, or you wouldn't be serving on this board. It's not a hard decision, though, to listen to the community as you are doing now. Thank you.
Thank you, Nydia. Next, we're going to hear from Nina Muzinski. Nina, you're unmuted. You should be able to speak. You have 2 minutes.
All right, thank you very much. I'm Nina Muzinski. I've lived in the neighborhood for 28 years. I strongly oppose the hardship application seeking to demolish the West Park Presbyterian Church. I was a member of the small group with Susan Sullivan and Mitch Shamroth and Gail Brewer that managed to get the church landmark. I see over their dead bodies. I'm sorry about that. But during the past few years, I've been so happy to see life returning to the church in the form of a thriving and ever-growing arts community. The Center for West Park brought art, music, live theater, and joy to the formerly deserted church, not to mention to our neighborhood. I attended several performances there, and I can tell you that the reputation for great acoustics in the sanctuary is totally deserved. It's remarkable. This church, as you all know, is one of the only remaining Romanesque revival landmarks in New York City. You've heard that tonight. Our community loves it. I think you've heard that. We've proven our commitment to it by supporting the Center for West Park. The Presbyterian, on the other hand, has done all that it can to destroy it. And frankly, I find the bad faith of the Presbyterian in evicting the tenants who have already raised funds to restore the building, and we're continuing to do so, and to turn around then and say that they have to claim hardship. It's stupefying to me. I find that's a deliberate neglect. I'm sorry. It's time to relieve the church of the church. The capital that you say the church is not the church. Well, give it to the community then, or sell it rather. By selling it to the city and to our community, we'll get there. And by restoring and protecting this landmark for future New Yorkers, we're surrounded by a growing number of luxury high-rises. Let's keep one venerable old building.
Thank you, Nina. We're going to hear from Catherine Cheong.
Hello?
Yes, you have 2 minutes. Please introduce yourself and begin.
Oh, hi. My name is Catherine Chong, and I've lived on the Upper West Side for over 50 years. But it's actually my daughter Melody, who's 8, who would like to say something.
I'm Melody, and I'm 8. I really love seeing this beautiful church as I walk from school. It reminds me of God, and it's really such a beautiful place.
And I would just like to second that emotion. Our arguments are purely emotional, but what is landmarks preservation if not a romantic and emotional effort to hold the forces of instrumentalization and capitalism and what is most efficient in the short term at bay in order to preserve something for future generations. And I would like to say that my commitment to the center has been deep and vast, but I've only ever seen one performance there, and it was a bread and puppet theatrical performance, but it was so memorable. And even though we're not regular members, we do feel like if they came with the bulldozers, we'd want to sit down in front of them in order to save this structure. So we do feel like the structure is much larger than the issue of the presbytery's hardship, or even just the community members that have been affected over these past decades, that it somehow belongs to history and belongs to future generations. And please preserve it for us. Thank you.
Thank you. That is everyone on Zoom, and we have been joined in person with the most esteemed guest, Councilmember Brewer. We will of course give you the pleasure to speak on this item again if you would like. She can get applause, no one else, but Gail gets applause. This mic doesn't really work in the room, but it's necessary for folks
Okay,
outside.
all right. Thank you very much. I think Adam's letting me because I know him since he's born. So I am Gail Brewer, City Council member, and I know this is a topic that is obviously very dear to my heart, but I want to make something clear in terms of the funding. I believe, and I think I should owe an apology. Laura Jervis mentioned correctly that when we landmarked it, we did promise to raise the funding to be able to renovate. That didn't happen. But in the more recent years, with the center and the board and the celebrities and the community, that is now possible. It was not possible before. And I think people are worried about where will the funding come to renovate this building. 8 million to purchase, 30 million to purchase, whatever the number is, we can do it. It's not something that I say idly as we did before, and I apologize for that. But I want people to understand that it's not possible right now, legally, as I understand it, to say that this foundation and this person is going to give us money, because that would be not legally possible. When we have, and I must admit, I hope the hardship is not granted by the Landmarks Preservation Commission, because I don't think the building is not falling down. The building does have activity. The building does have worshipers, and we can certainly have Presbyterian worshipers. All of that is possible. I feel so strongly, of course, as I think some members of the board do, that this is a beautiful building, and it would be a shame to tear down, and it would be a shame not to have the cultural activities and the religious activities, both of which are possible. That sanctuary, as you have heard, you can hear a pin drop because the acoustics are so phenomenal. And any new black box or any new theater would never have that kind of opportunity for productions. So I'm almost begging people to say, we will make this happen. It is not an idle opportunity in terms of the funding. I want the Presbyterian to have money. They are an institution that deserves to have money for this building. And we are committed to doing that. But we can't do it if we do not have the opportunity to rent it or purchase it. And that would only happen if the hardship is not granted. So I thank you very much for everybody who's made this possible. And thank you, Adam, so much. And thank you, Madge, for being chairing of this committee.
Thank you. They didn't sign up, so unfortunately I can't. I don't see their name. I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you. We will begin our committee discussion then. We have some folks who are non-committee members who are joining us on Zoom as well. I will do my best to notice you when you raise your hand or gesticulate wildly or unmute yourself and interrupt. I want to start by saying that it is interesting to be here again, looking at the same thing that the committee, I was not on the committee a couple years ago. Since then, the applicant has gone through a number of discussions with Landmarks. A number of outside experts have been hired by Landmarks. So I think that the information we have today is very different from the information that the committee had a couple years ago. And that allows us to potentially make a more informed decision on this matter. The way that I would like to structure the committee discussion is if we could begin first by discussing, there's a draft resolution. If we could just ask if there are any issues in the upfront of the resolution before the therefore clause. I would love to just discuss that quickly, make any friendly changes that we need to make before we get into the substance of the therefore clause. So is there anyone on the committee who has edits or anything that needs to get made to the upfront? Yes, Klari. Oh, we'll begin with you, Madge.
Number 3 in the 4 criteria that the hardship has to meet is the building is no longer adequate, suitable, or appropriate for carrying out the current or historical character charitable use. Does that mean only as a church or the use as a theater and arts center and community center as well?
Madge is asking, in the hardships provision of the administrative code, it asks about the adequate, suitable, or appropriate nature. It refers to the current or historic charitable use. In this case, the applicant coming forward is the West Park Presbyterian Church. They have used it both as a church and as a other event space. So I think in that manner, it would be both of these things, but obviously, you know, it needs to encompass both. Klari? Sorry, we're gonna have to keep passing the mic like this.
Actually, I thank you for that answer, Adam. I believe that's correct. I was actually thinking more of the prior material, which I think could be written a little more cleanly, but I don't think it's worth spending time here to talk about it. If it's just minor corrections or improvements, we could do it another time or not do it at all.
Okay. Klari was saying that this is not the time to discuss those things. So perhaps okay. Excellent. Okay. We can do this two ways. We can talk through the different findings of the hardship, or we can go down in a line and say what people think. Does anyone have a strong preference one way or another? I'd be happy to start with everyone kind of speaking their piece, and then maybe we move on from there. Okay. Jen, why don't we start with you at the end?
Hi, good evening. I'm Jennifer Maulsby. I'm a new member to the committee. I was not here 3 years ago, and I've started in May. I've lived on the Upper West Side for almost 25 years. It is very clear how important the community center is to the community. And I have no specific further questions about the 4 tests. And I'm looking forward to our further discussion.
Hi, my name is Eric Schmidt. I'm also a new member to the committee. Yeah, I'm one of the, I forget who said it here tonight, but somebody said this is a difficult issue, and I hope I'm on the right, I hope I do the right thing on it. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, I'll be a little more lengthy. My name is Klari Neuwelt. I've been on the committee for a long time. I've been on the board for 30 years or so. It's my last term now because of term limits. And I've been involved with this issue for a long time. I was not at the meeting earlier this month because I couldn't attend, but I did read, read is a fair statement, the 200 pages of testimony that we had received and were distributed to committee members prior to tonight, and some of which was repeated in oral testimony tonight. We are, as one of our speakers tonight said, we represent the community that we, our community within our geographical limits. And we must take very seriously and have our decisions informed by the opinions of people in our community, but that's not to say that they are dispositive. And many of the comments that we received, although they were largely, other than those, for the most part, other than those from people associated with the Presbytery, those community comments were very largely in favor of not granting this, not supporting this application. On the other hand, many of those community comments were not addressed to the matters that are very specific to this application, which is the 4 findings that are a predicate to the first step towards demolition. There are 3 unfortunately unique circumstances, or relatively unique circumstances that we are constrained by and need to work around here. One is just physically the soft sandstone materials of this building that make it particularly amenable to loss of fabric over the years. The second is the anomalous, somewhat anomalous situation that the congregation owns the building, but the Presbytery, which is a much larger and not locally based organization within our district, is the real party in interest here and would benefit from whatever money came in if the building were destroyed and replaced. And the third thing is that we have a set of criteria that were written 50 years ago or so for what is the predicate for demolition, for de-landmarking and permitting demolition, that really are addressed to not for-profit buildings, but to commercial buildings and for rental buildings at that. So we have to adapt to these standards that just don't really, they're not a fit for the situation that we have, but we're stuck with all of that. So we have to work with that. Adam said in the beginning of the meeting that although this was a proposed resolution, that he expected there might be some amendments to it. And I want to propose that we consider not endorsing findings number 2, which is the property is incapable of earning a reasonable return, and that we not endorse finding number 3, that the building is no longer adequate, suitable, or appropriate for carrying out the current or historic charitable use, which, as Adam, I think, has correctly answered Madge's question, is not just the religious use, but the other social and cultural uses to which it has been put for a considerable amount of time. I was chair or co-chair of the equivalent of this committee on CB7 at the time when the original landmark application came up in, maybe it was 2009 because the landmarking was in 2010, but in that period, and even in that period, the scaffolding was there. It was questionable as to whether the funds would ever be raised to restore this building, both the exterior and the interior, and make it ADA compliant. But I think our feeling then, and I supported landmarking then, and that is what happened. I was on this committee in 2022, I believe, when the first application for de-landmarking came up that was later withdrawn. It was not an easy question then because it was now 12 years later rather, and none of the rest, limited work had been done, let's put it that way. And now we're 3 years later and not a very different situation physically. Nevertheless, so that kind of argues in favor of the application. Nevertheless, the financial issues, the competing projections, the competing arguments, and then adding to that, Mr. Hiller's associate in 2 minutes tonight gave the briefest argument that was a précis of a letter that we received from the Hiller firm that represents the center this afternoon at 5 o'clock that is dense with both legal argument and factual argument. My own history is that I'm a lawyer who had a relative, I'm retired now, but he had a relatively sophisticated business-related practice. And I still feel that I am not comfortable personally, or having my committee members, maybe some are more comfortable than I am, reaching the conclusion with the degree of certainty that I feel we would want to have that criterion number 2 has been met. There are just too many competing arguments, too many facts and figures, and I would like to have our committee consider not reaching that conclusion. I think there's a good, I'll be finished shortly, Adam, but I think there's a similarly good argument for not reaching the conclusion of the third criterion, which is the building is no longer adequate, suitable, or appropriate for carrying out the current or historical charitable use. Well, the congregation, the very small congregation, has chosen not to worship there, but a different congregation has been worshiping there. And a tremendous number of cultural activities have been taking place there successfully without the building actually falling in. So I'm comfortable and would like the committee to consider not making the third finding. To me, if we make all 4 findings affirmatively, notwithstanding the fact that we then say, gee, pretty please, it would be at the end, the resolution, it'd be wonderful if somebody could save this building anyway within the very limited ability of how that could happen once these findings have been made. Really a more uphill battle. I think we can support what I believe is everybody's wish in a perfect world to save this building, and we can support that better without undermining that, I believe, universal wish by making findings that I think I'm not comfortable making, and I don't think the board should be comfortable making.
Klari has stated a few things that I was going to say myself, so I won't repeat them. I would start out by saying there are a few things that we are not charged with doing. We're not charged with deciding whether or not the Arts Center is a laudable institution and is an asset to the community. As far as what we are charged with is determining whether or not the 4 criteria have been met. We are not charged with determining whether the church is a building worthy of landmarking. We are, that ship has sailed. That determination has been made. Whether we might have agreed with it 15 years ago is not the issue. We start with the premise that a landmark building should be worthy of preservation if possible. But we have to be guided by the 4 criteria in the law. I'm a lawyer like Klari. I'm also retired like Klari, and I practiced in the commercial field, represented developers, engaged in real estate transactions, etc. And I tend to focus on what our precise obligation is as a community board and as an advisory board to the Landmarks Commission. If we make findings that are not supported by the facts, that are not credible, then we won't have the influence that we have when the Landmarks Commission makes its final determination. We don't have the power to approve or disapprove this application. Our only power is the influence that we produce by acting rationally and according to the applicable law. So I agree with Klari that we have to focus on the 4 criteria, but I don't agree that we can't make a decision. I think that the evidence that we have, the preponderance of the evidence that we have, if not beyond any doubt, is that the criteria number 2, that the existing property is incapable of producing a reasonable return, has been met. Despite the fact that there's a disparity between some of the analyses, I think the overwhelming evidence is that there's an enormous expense in the offing to renovate this building, repair this building, and make it feasible as an institution that can produce a return. And I agree with Klari, which I was on the committee and on the board the last time that this issue was before the board. And I felt strongly at that time and expressed my belief that this statute was not designed for this situation, but this is what we have before us. And this is the guide that the Landmarks Commission will use. And I just want to take 2 minutes so that make sure, 2 more minutes, to make sure that everybody understands what the process is. Landmarks Commission initially has 2 options. They can disapprove the application and the process closes, or they can issue a preliminary determination which triggers another process. That process, according to the statute, triggers 180 days. Some people have suggested this process, which is that the Landmarks Commission would then be charged to go out with the help of anyone they choose, persons, organizations, government organizations, elected officials, whomever, and see if they can find an alternative purchaser for what the statute says for an identical set of conditions with the church, which includes the financial conditions, but a purchaser who cannot demolish the building and cannot apply for a hardship application. So the process wouldn't be over by an approval. It's only preliminary. And there is that time for people to raise money, for public officials to attempt to raise money, not directly because they can't do it that way, but there is that period of time. And then there's a third step. If the commission doesn't find an alternative purchaser under those terms and conditions, they may not, they're not forced to, but they may then notify the mayor and request that the city provide, and I give you the exact, a particular protective interest to try and salvage this building. Now, I can tell you that that protective interest is nowhere defined in the law or precedent, but could include things like a city purchase, things like a long-term lease, and so forth and so on. So this is not a finite process that's going to end with the Landmarks Commission. Personally, I think the burden has been met on these four criteria, and I think it obligates us under the law to report to the commission that they should issue this preliminary determination and start that secondary process.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief given our time period. In the application, they discuss a number of different scenarios, and under all of these scenarios, it is clear that there's an inability to earn a reasonable return. I think, however, that the scenario that's most important is the one that was discussed in detail 3 years ago before Landmarks Preservation Commission, which is that if you take the estimate from the engineer that LPC hired, and you take the rents that could be reached for the building from the analysis that LPC called for, the reasonable return is still not met. So you can argue all you want about the potential of the inflated costs in the analyses that the applicant has done. You can argue that had the cantilevered building been modeled as condos instead of rentals, you know, the amount would have been a little bit higher. But the fact that LPC itself, in the analyses that they hired folks to do and looked at, and that those analyses from the people that LPC hired still could not meet this reasonable return with this much lower amount of money to spend on the building. That, to me, is why 3 years later, we as CB7 can come to a different determination and be more certain in our determination than we did 3 years ago.
I'm torn, absolutely torn about this. the fact that nothing's been done in all these years since this was last brought to us in 2022. I don't know how it's going to change now, because as Adam said, the financial part is not there, the reasonable return. The building, my only question is finding number 3, whether it's adequate, suitable, and appropriate for carrying out current or historic charitable uses. Now, I don't know if that includes the theater that was there and all the art centers and things that were given to people at reasonable rates. I guess you could consider that charitable, and that seemed to have worked. As far as supporting, I support this in the fact that this hardship is there for constitutional purposes, to say that people are not taking private property. And for that, I respect this law, and I have a hard time trying to get around it. Although I would love to see the city in any way it can, through the Department of Cultural Affairs, through a very creative architect, to find a way to keep this property not totally as is, but at least part of it standing.
My name's Karpen, and I was here 3 years ago, chaired the committee when we went through the original determination on this. I chaired the committee 3 years ago when we went through the original determination on and ruling on this hardship application. I've also been in and out of the building for the last 40 years, including up in the rafters, including down in the bowels. I've worshiped with West Park Presbyterian Church. I have been to a number of events of the center at West Park as well. I have a great affection both for the church community and for the community that's formed around the center at West Park. One of the things that makes all this very difficult. 3 years ago, we decided, as I said, not to deny the hardship. I've been listening hard for things that are different. And I haven't heard a lot that convinces me personally. I am very familiar with the hardship proceeding. I went through it myself with the church I was pastoring back in the 1980s. I was only 3 years old at the time. I think that, as Jay and Klari and others have pointed out, we do need to focus on the 4 criteria that are there in the hardship law and the code. And I don't have any problem with 1 and 4, but I can't support, after hearing all of this testimony, I can't support numbers 2 or 3. I just, I am completely unconvinced on those 2 points. So I look forward to further conversation, but that's where I am right now.
I want to give a chance if non-committee members want to speak, but please keep it very brief, and just members of Community Board 7 who are not a member of the Preservation Committee. But Doug, if you could just keep it very brief, I'm conscious of the time.
I understand that. I am the outbound vice chair of Community Board 7 for the next 48 hours, and I am the longest serving member on the executive committee, and I'm going to take executive privilege to speak. I'm not going to speak long, but I'm not going to unnaturally abbreviate. So I, by profession, am a commercial real estate broker. I work in the real estate industry. I have nothing against profit. I have nothing against making money, building condominiums, but there's a few things prima facie that are bothering me. We've heard that this building is falling down, but the Department of Buildings allows occupancy. Why? The insurance companies, as we all know, are very, very prone to risk, yet the building is fully insured. Why? With all respect to the church, and I have great respect for the church as well as I do for developers, etc., you've hired a white glove law firm, which is wonderful. They're experts, but you're crying a hardship. I've heard earlier this evening that someone said that the church is very sad about this, and I can give you 33 million reasons why I don't believe you. Okay, so what we need to make, all 4 criteria have to be met, and I don't personally believe that it has been met. Again, it is the Preservation Commission. The church, by definition, is a not-for-profit. Surely there must be some middle ground between hardship and windfall. You know that this building, I mean, the church wants to sell there's nothing against the church selling the building. They can sell the building to anybody pretty much, right? But if you sell it to a not-for-profit, then it opens up the floodgates for city and state funding. I am on the advisory for the Metro Theater, which is exactly what's happening over there, right? There's money that has been given by Governor Hochul. There's money given by Sean Abreu in the city council. I am not prepared to vote. I will be voting as a non-committee member, but this will go to full board. I am not prepared to vote for the wrecking ball, and I'm not prepared to vote for what I call a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Thank you.
Alex Bell. I thought the testimony was very compelling, but like Jay and Adam, I'm focused on the 4 items particularly. I think I agree with all 4, although my biggest question is number 3. But the way I read it is in terms of adequate or suitable use. It's not that like the physical building has collapsed, and so is it suitable? Not, you know, tomorrow, but as a long term in this use. And I think that the applicant has made it very clear why, with the list of DOB violations and et cetera, it's not suitable for the long term. So I agree with Adam and Jay that I think that all 4 items have been met.
All right. I'll just remind everyone that, as Jay outlined, this is by no means the end of the building. I would like to focus our conversation on item. I think everyone agrees with everything except we have some discussion about 2 and 3. So what I think, conscious of the time, we have about 15-20 minutes or so. I would suggest that if there are new points that you would like to talk about with regards to point 2, I will give you that opportunity now. But if you've already outlined your concerns with point 2, we can probably move on. So anything new to add about point 2?
Adam, I think this does perhaps, I hope, relate to point 2. There's been discussion over the months of both the feasibility of cantilevering a new building and maintaining a structure in some fashion, and of air rights being sold. I don't find either of those arguments or possibilities to be particularly helpful here. So I would discard those. But on the other hand, and I think this also goes to point 2, the notion that the presbytery, not the congregation, but the presbytery would get $30 million or so out of this to further its religious and social mission in whatever way it does in whatever parts of New York City or elsewhere, also should be, I think, considered not relevant to the decision on the finances and what is good and what's bad about it. I just wanted to say something else, and I don't know if it meets your number 2 criteria, but I've always been troubled by the notion of, hey, you're going to get a 10,000 square foot space, and that's really a great benefit of this starting over and tearing down the building and making a new one. 10,000 square feet in the basement, probably gross square feet, not count, I don't know for sure, but probably not counting hallways and closets and things like that. And in the basement, I do not regard as any kind of benefit to the community that has any real significance. Sorry if that doesn't quite meet your number 2 criteria. I want to say one more thing, though, if I could, about the possible future if the LPC should, on our recommendation or otherwise, grant the hardship and set in motion whatever might be the following procedures. Jay mentioned, and thank you, Jay, for doing the research on what could happen next, that the last resort would be the mayor. We will have a new mayor by the time anything happens on this application. A variety of preservation groups had a forum during the time of the Democratic mayoral primary, in which the candidates were invited to come and talk about their views on preservation. To my recollection, and I watched that, it was on Zoom. To my recollection, none of the three candidates who are currently before us appeared. I don't and spoke at that. I don't know if we have if anybody knows what any of their views are on preservation. But I would regard all of the potential things that might follow a determination by LPC that the hardship criteria have been met as a lot less likely to save the building than what we could do to reject findings 2, and I'll include 3 in this. That's probably all I have to say.
Yeah, please.
This is not, again, sorry.
If it's not related to 2, we'll come back to it. And unfortunately, a lot of what Klari said is not related to 2. So.
It's commentary on a couple of things that were said. So
okay, all right, keep it quick.
Okay, a couple of things that my very good friend Doug mentioned. Number one, again, we're confined in our evaluation by the 4 criteria. Safety is not one of them. Occupancy is not one of them. Insurability is not one of them. And so all of those things may be interesting, but to quote Klari, that's another one, that group of factors that are irrelevant.
Yeah. Anything else on 2, Jay?
No.
Okay.
Or on 3.
Can you pass this to Jen?
Just very quickly, when I reviewed the hundreds of pages, the economic modeling, I believe that you cannot make a reasonable return with what was presented, and so I agree. And I'm curious as to what could happen in the 180 days if, as written, was allowed, and how additional fundraising or capacity building could change that particular determination. And that is an open thought of mine, because that 180 days is an important time. If something could change, it's unclear that could happen.
No, because we gotta keep moving.
I gotta comment on 2. I think that a lot of the testimony that we've heard from the center at West Park and other related comments and things like that are directly related to this question of reasonable return. I think that obviously landmark law, as we know, was not written with nonprofits in mind, was not written with religious facilities and institutions in mind. And so the criterion that are in the law for reasonable return are a little bit odd when we're trying to work on it. But certainly there are financial resources that are available to the church through the renting of it to this or other arts programs. So I just, for that reason, I think there's more to be said on number 2.
Okay, given where we are and given what the time is, I don't think anyone's view on this item is going to change. My suggestion is we take a informal vote of the committee on item 2. Let's see where it is. I think that'll be indicative of a vote on the broader resolution and can move us towards something that the committee can vote on in the next 15 to 20 minutes. Klari, we do have a time limit, and we need to be out of the room in approximately 22 minutes. So I totally agree with you. So with that said, I'm going to ask, as the resolution is drafted, it says that the existing property is incapable of earning a reasonable return. And I would love to just get a show of hands of folks on the committee who feel good about that finding and including it in the resolution. We'll move to 3 after, who agree that the property is incapable of earning a reasonable rate of return. So, okay. So it looks like there is a slim but possible majority on the existing property is incapable of earning a reasonable rate of return. Okay, then I want to move on to item 3 about whether or not the building is adequate, suitable, or appropriate. I'd like to remind people that it is not just the physical plant, but also the ability to exist as it's a wrong phrase to use, but as an ongoing concern. And that you need to account into this the degree to which the maintenance of the building may or may not make it adequate, suitable, or appropriate for the current owner to continue its current or historic charitable use.
So in favor of 3?
Sorry. So I don't want to vote on 3. Excuse me, please. So that is how I understand it, is that it is not a situation where if someone had a building that was perfectly fine today, but required a tremendous amount of ongoing maintenance, let's say something had astronomically high maintenance costs for some reason, that would have to be something that's accounted for in this discussion, is how I read it. Open to other interpretations, but Debbie, if you're gonna speak out of turn, and at this point it's just a discussion for the committee, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave the room. I really don't want to have to do that, but we're just focused on having a discussion among community board members. Okay, we're gonna carry on. On item 3, is there anyone here who would like to speak on? Ma'am, I'm gonna have to say the exact same thing I said to Debbie. We're trying to have a discussion here. We have very limited time left. Okay. Is there anyone who would like to speak on item 3?
Well, twice the legal team and engineering team have taken us through that building. It didn't look pretty inadequate to me. It looked like lots of good stuff was going on there. It wasn't, it has to be made more accessible for sure, but I wouldn't say that the building is inadequate for all the purposes. I think the sanctuary is so beautiful and a wonderful place for theater and concerts. And so I wouldn't say inadequate, no.
I agree with Madge that the building is certainly adequate, suitable, and appropriate for carrying out the current and historic charitable uses.
Yes, I mean, I think I initiated the discussion on 3, so it'll be no surprise that I agree with Madge and Kay on this. And I'm not sure that your exegesis on the meaning of this, Adam, was correct. It may be right, it might be wrong, but I think all we can really look at is the wording of the statute, I guess it is. And I'm not comfortable with adding our personal gloss on, which some of us may not be comfortable with. So I will not vote in favor of, so I would not vote in favor of finding number 3. No surprise there, Jane.
Yeah, I'm reading number 3 a little differently. Number 3 says that if the building is no longer adequate, suitable, or appropriate for carrying out the current or historic charitable use. The center is not a charitable use. Dance lessons, art, so are not charitable uses. They're commercial uses. They are. They're commercial uses. They are not charitable uses.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the audience again to please try to remain respectful as the committee works this out. Is there anyone else? Jen?
I disagree with that. I believe that nonprofits carry, if you're a public charity, a 501c3 designated public charity, you by definition, you're carrying out a charitable act. And I was struck by some of the testimony that talked about the church using it, the space most recently to host their own events, which was news to me, and that had has changed my perspective. While I do believe the activities are worthy, they're important, and they're community-based activities, it's unclear whether they are church-based activities and what the real approach is. So.
Okay, from hearing what I've heard, I do not think we were going to have a majority on item 3. So I'm going to set that aside. I want to ask, is there anyone who would like to speak on the second part of the therefore clause, which says that should LPC issue a preliminary determination of insufficient return, that we would like everyone to work together to find a way to save the building within the statute? Is there anyone who would like to speak against that, or is everyone comfortable with how that is drafted?
I think it's mandatory.
There are circumstances where I could imagine that, again, the hardship determination is not just for demolition. There are circumstances where something is determined to be inappropriate for the building, but short of demolition. And I can imagine circumstances where a community would be happy to have that change made and not have LPC work to find an alternative buyer. Okay, based on what I'm hearing here, I think we need to modify the resolution and say that we do not find that the building is no longer adequate, suitable, or appropriate for carrying out the current or historic charitable use, and that therefore the Landmarks Preservation Commission per statute should not issue a preliminary determination of insufficient return. Would that change? Anyone want to speak on that change?
I thought I understood this, Adam, until your last phrase. I think when you said should not issue a determination of insufficient return, that's only number 2, but that should not grant the application is really, I think, what we mean, because we have not found all 4 factors to have been met. Therefore, the application LPC should not grant the application.
I guess that would work.
I think that's really where we are.
Well, I mean, it's just different.
Well, I think that's where we are.
I think not granting a preliminary determination of insufficient return is not granting a hardship. Okay, Jay, is there anything you want to say on this before we vote?
No.
Is there anything non-committee members want to speak on before we vote? Doug, you're going to have to come use the microphone.
It's only a point of fact. I just want to say how rare this is. In 60 years, if this was granted, this would be the 14th time in the city of New York since the Landmark Preservation Commission was created. 14th. 60 years. Think about how many landmarks there are. Think about how many years that is. That is very weighing heavily on my conscience. Thank you. It's a point of fact.
Okay, so the resolution will say, in essence, that we find that number 1 has been met. That is that the owner has agreed to sell or lease the property contingent on a notice to proceed. 2, that the existing property is incapable of earning a reasonable return under the scenarios the applicant presented. It will say that we did not find number 3, that the building is no longer adequate, suitable, or appropriate. And it will say that we did find number 4, that the purchaser seeks to immediately demolish the building and to build a new building on the site with reasonable promptness. And thus the Landmarks Preservation Commission per statute should not grant a hardship to the owner of this building. But if the Landmarks Preservation Commission should decide to issue a preliminary determination of insufficient return, then we call upon community members, organizations, elected officials, government agencies, etc., to seek an alternative purchaser of an identical interest. And should an alternative purchaser not be found, the city should consider, in consultation with Community Board 7 and the broader community, the possibility of the city taking a specific, appropriate, protective interest in the building. Can I get a motion to vote? Okay, great. Klari is moving. Okay. Committee members in favor, please raise your hand. I have 3, 5. Okay. Opposed? Abstentions? And cause would be 0. Okay. Non-committee members, Seema, I'm going to need you to go on video so I can see how you vote. Non-committee members in favor? Okay. 1. Opposed? Sorry, Seema, did you vote in? Sorry. Okay, that's 2 in favor with Seema. Thank you, Seema. Okay, 2 in favor, opposed?
Change my vote to no.
Abstentions? And then cause would be 0. Okay, so the vote is going to, the vote passes with committee members 5-2-0-0, and non-committee members, it passes 2-1-1-0. For the broader community, this will be voted at the full board meeting next week. There is not going to be time, as we've made time at the previous meeting and this meeting, for as much public testimony. So I would really encourage folks to use the existing sheet, Google form, where you can submit testimony. We received over 200 pages of testimony so far, and I would like to thank the community. All of the testimony has been distinct and unique perspectives that we really value. I work as a government official and read a lot of testimony, and it's often form testimony. There was not a single sentence that was repeated, so thank you. But I would encourage you to submit that testimony by midnight on Sunday so that it can be compiled and distributed to the board ahead of the vote next week. Can I get and the meeting next week is next Wednesday at 6:30 at, where is it? Where? At B'nai Jeshurun. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Okay, so moved. And folks in the audience, we need to be out of this room in the next 9 minutes. So